Welcome to the Galen Trombley Show. You can find me on Facebook at Galen Trombley, on Instagram at Galen Trombley, and on YouTube at Galen Trombley. Spelling GaelanTrombley. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Galen Trombley Show. Pretty free-flowing. Hello, everybody. This is episode 178 of the Galen Trombley Show. I do want to make a quick note here. This is our first episode, I think, close to a month, which is one of the longest breaks, minus when we took the COVID break for the shutdown. But mostly because I was fighting sicknesses and a couple just like same thing with some guests. Obviously, with COVID world, we had some cancellations. So that's why this is actually our first episode, I think, since like middle of December. We do anticipate having a full schedule again this year. Have a lot of good guests lined up. But our person kicking off this year, none other than Chris Trombley. And I had to get the title correct, but now we got it. So he's the Eastern Division Operations Manager at Country Malt Group.
Correct.
Okay, perfect.
Good morning.
Good morning. And we also have a fill-in surprise guest of the show, but maybe we'll get him some hot takes over here. Caleb Trombley.
Yeah.
And Caleb is son of Chris Trombley, student at Paul Smith's, EMT, and I found out is possibly the voice of Wiry in the future.
Probably in the future, but we'll see.
Okay, so we might get some. We'll get some takes on Caleb, and maybe he can fact check his old man here, depending if he goes off tilt here. So. Chris, welcome. I'm glad you're doing this. Is this your first podcast?
Yeah, it's my first podcast. Listened to, obviously, plenty of your podcasts. I think you're up to 175 or something of that nature.
178.
178,
yeah.
But I haven't listened to all 178, probably half of that. But nice to be here.
So you have listened to a lot of these?
Yeah, a few of them.
Which ones are, if you had to pick, which ones did you enjoy the most?
Well, I always like the ones about real estate, to be honest with you. And
okay.
I kind of, not that I'm in real estate, but I know your father Joey's in real estate, but I always listen to his show on Wiry and every Saturday afternoon or Saturday morning, I should say. And then anytime you have a special guest, has to do with real estate, it kind of fascinates me a little bit. So
what's your fascination with real estate?
I just
you're opening the the
Pandora,
lid right now.
Yeah,
Pandora's box
for real estate. Well, I'm not an expert. I'm always interested in seeing how people kind of work. See how our company has grown, or not our company, but seeing how our region has grown, and just a few years ago it was so tough to sell something, and it was a real challenge, and as business has grown, especially like in the Plattsburgh, Clinton County area, there's a really big need for real estate. And I've never seen it so much more than as currently as right now with some of the bigger companies that we have, Bombardier and things of that nature.
I look at so the one thing that I like about my career so far is that I've been able to go. This is the start of my 12th year. I was a young kid when I started, but I saw the end of the 7-8 housing collapse. Like I didn't go in at that point; it was a couple years later. But to see it go from there, where short sales and foreclosures and the amount of inventory sky high out there, where people were having a hard time finding, the sellers are finding hard time finding buyers. Now, over a 10-year period or 12-year period, we're starting to see, homes. I just did we're doing kind of our end of the year market, recap thing. And realistically right now, most homes are selling, I think, under 2 months on average with active days on the market.
Wow.
And that's average. So you got to look at, obviously if people are overvalued for a little bit, they stay on longer, but a lot of homes are going within days, and you're seeing, bidding wars, and there's a house Friday, the person's like, I want to make an offer on it. I asked the agent, like, hey, any offers? She's like, I got 3 in hand, a couple more coming, and this was 24 hours after it's been listed. So it's just to see that and to see, there's such a gap there, and we can, like I said, nerd out on that maybe in a little bit for you. But
and seeing your father and of course folks, growing up with Kavanaugh Realty back when it was in Ross's Point, actually, and knowing a lot of folks that work there, it's just amazing to see how area like homes have depreciated or in some cases increased in value. Mm-hmm. Same thing on the commercial side. went to school with Matt Boyer, so I've always admired what Matt and Mark have done
Yep.
with CDC. Not to speak of your competition, but they sell
They do
business.
commercial. We work a lot with them, actually.
Right.
Matt and Alex. So, no, they're good.
Alex is great. Matt's great. And then, of course, just through my company, dealing a little bit with Neil Facette, who's a great guy, and having some exposure to him. So I've always kind of been fascinated in what you guys do.
Yeah, it's. I think one of the cool things, I call it like a sexy industry, is that everybody sees houses and it's interesting. And I think some certain companies, like I got some buddies in finance, and I got some buddies in whether it be insurance. Like, no offense, insurance isn't really something like that people like because it's not visual. It's like a piece of paper. And real estate, it's paper. It's what you see it every day driving home. So that's kind of the cool thing is like our product is literally lining the streets anywhere you drive. So I always find that it does attract people's attention more so than than other fields. So that's like I said, it does. It's kind of cool to be in that because we always joke, how's the market? Is hear almost every day, especially if you're out and about and talking to people. It's like, hey, how's everything going? Like, how's the market? What's the prices? So one of the things I do is really try to stay on top of that for those reasons. So it's not like I'm like, I don't really know what the market's doing.
And it's funny, it's funny too because I have some exposure to some, I guess, folks younger than me now. But I remember the feeling was when I first bought my first piece of land and put a well on it and then did the foundation and actually built the house. It was a pretty exciting time. And I see some young folks right now that are really doing a great job and they're more into, a couple people I know in particular are buying duplexes for an example, and they're doing quite well.
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to kind of do that secretly, but I just never had the time. And
multifamily,
yeah, it's always and that's, I don't want to say it's a fad, but it is if you can put the time into it and the dedication, and it can really pay off. So
well, I think real estate they've said is historically one of the most consistent wealth drivers because everything appreciates. Even if you have a dip, overall it appreciates. And you look at most, I think I'd read a stat that most, was it billionaires or multimillionaires or whatever, a lot of them had a fairly large real estate portfolio.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of this might be they own the building their company's in, but they, some of those places are worth, millions and millions and millions of dollars, and it's just the big massive company that houses their company and multiple companies. And maybe with the exception of Elon Musk, I think pretty much everybody's got some type of real estate out there.
Yeah.
So Chris, diving into your business, kind of give us a background, like who you are, where you came from, how you got to be kind of the Eastern Division Operations Manager. You gave me a quick, brief intro before we went live, but kind of give the people that don't know who you are what you do. Kind of give us a rundown.
So started off, my career started off like everybody else, probably went to some college, went to school, and started in the workforce, a couple small jobs. Went to at the time Wyeth Pharmaceuticals, or actually Aris, then Wyeth, then eventually became Pfizer. Spent like 18 or 19 years there. Really got to work with some good people there, and got some great exposure to all kinds of great, just standard practices, and just but at the same time had a chance to expand my education like many folks did when they were at Wyeth. They offered a great tuition reimbursement program, so took my Clinton community career or school career, and then eventually went to Canton College for emergency management, which is my true passion, which I love. And then of course Pfizer and things have changed over the years. Eventually went to a small company by the name of Country Malt Group. Started off by Brian Bayshard and his father Claude back in 1995 area or time frame, if you will. Small company, right? And truly, and it was in Champlain, New York, in my backyard. Did not know a lot about it. I knew Brian. He was a year behind me in school at Northeastern Clinton. But when you're in school, you look ahead, you don't look back, right? But eventually got hired at Country Malt Group, which is a division of Great Western Malting, which is now a division of United Malt Corp. And with that, it's really nice because it's like working for a small company, but yet you're working for a bigger group, if you will. And with United Malt or Great Western Malting, we're also part of the Canada Malting Group and a whole bunch of other folks. So it's a really been a great career.
So where did Country Malt start out? Was it back in the industrial park? Because it was there for a time, wasn't it?
It actually started in a tool shed in Ross's Point.
Okay. I figured it had to be a little more.
It started off in a tool shed, and of course Brian Bayshard, just a great individual, great businessman, great friend. Started the company. he had a degree in a financial background, if you will, and a degree in finance, and really took it to the next level. Again, starting out from a tool shed, and of course I'm going by what Brian's told me in the history and Claude, and brought it to rented a small warehouse, leased actually a small warehouse space in Champlain on Beeman Way, where we're currently our Champlain facility is, and then eventually leased the rest of the warehouse, and then eventually added on in 2000 time frame. And by the time I came on about 8 years ago, they were just expanding that facility into 100,000 square feet with the help of Neil Fassett.
So when you look at, was it ever on the, so what was the one that was on Industrial Boulevard off of Route 11?
Oh, that was through the Industrial Development Agency. We had a small distribution site, actually a receiving center on Route 11, Podcat Drive and Route 11 in the town of Champlain. And that worked out well for us until we built a 100,000 square foot facility.
So everything's now on Beeman Way.
Everything now is on Beeman Way.
I haven't seen the whole thing. I remember back when it was being put up, and I knew Neil was involved in it at the time. And this is about 10 years ago?
That's about 8 years ago now when I first started. We were just diving into that when I first came on.
Well, I was from Shazy, so I used to play golf a lot as a kid. So like I say as a kid, but even back then, like driving in up to the office in Rouse's Point, so we drove by it a lot. But it's behind the trees, so like you kind of see a little bit of it. But like right now, you can see a little bit more, obviously with the leaves down.
Yeah,
but it's tucked back. But 100,000 square. That's how big it is.
100,000 square. Well, with the there's three buildings, and with the combined, it's like 152,000 square feet, give or take a little bit. And so with Neil's help and we really developed that. Neil did a great job, just a great individual, great person to work with.
How many people work at Country Malt?
Well, right now we have 12 different sites across North America. In Champlain, we have approximately, with the CSRs, which is the customer service group, who takes the orders for North America. I think at one time, we were up to 37 or 40 people. Now, this is give or take because COVID has really, changed things a little bit to some degree, and the fact that many of our people work from home, as many do in the North Country and across North America now. But at the total site right now in the warehouse, we have approximately 27 people. And
then about the same amount within the office
within
space
the office space by the time you add the other ancillary people.
So out of the 150,000 square feet, how much of that's warehouse space?
Oh, a good share of it. I mean, there's some. We do some light manufacturing. We have a bagging line at the Champlain facilities to where we can bag bulk malt. We have 6 20 metric ton silos, and then I would say probably about 130 of it is actual warehouse space. And we have 2 large hop coolers that we store hops in and things of that nature. And
Country Malt Group, just kind of give people that don't know, like what are you guys in the business of doing?
So we're the distribution arm of the company. So we distribute malt and hops and all the stuff to make beer basically and support the craft industry, if you will. So it's not just malt. It's it could be cleaning agents, that type of thing. And a lot of hops, a lot of grain, obviously, a lot of different types of products.
So people wouldn't buy directly from you, but you would distribute to the people where they could buy from.
Yeah, you have to be, in order to buy from us, you have to have a brick and mortar location, if you will, and you have to be a said customer. So we don't sell wholesale, like we don't sell on site, but we sell to established customers, if you will.
Do you establish or to any local companies?
Yeah, we have locally. It's kind of neat. We work with some great people. Jesse Jolliker comes to mind from Ovalcraft. Dan and Dylan at Ausable Brewing, just 2 great individuals that make some great beer. Valcor Brewing is one. I mean, I could go on and on. I'm probably going to miss one. Plattsburgh Brewing Company.
So most of the major local beers or local craft areas.
And then to the point where we also deal on the commercial side. I mean, one of our biggest commercial customers in Vermont is the Alchemist.
I was wondering that.
Yeah, the Alchemist, which everybody smiles when you say that because they make Hetty Topper and Focal Banger and all this great beer. So they're just great people to deal with.
Does most of the because Vermont's obviously got a big craft beer culture over there. Do you guys Magic Hat or Fiddlehead or
most of those folks Switchback, and we have a great affiliation with Switchback and Tony and Switchback is interesting because since I've been here, it's now it's all now employee owned, which is great for those people. Bill Cherry obviously started Switchback in the day, and Brian knows them very well. But they're all employee owned right now, and you talk to those individuals there, and they have a buy-in, which is great. You don't see that very often, in a lot of the breweries.
Well, I look at a lot of those companies because, I mean, they're national companies now. I mean,
Right.
And you look at least Switchback, and I think Fiddlehead's starting to get there, and you can travel quite a distance. You can still find those beers on the shelf. Obviously, Magic Hat for years has been there, but I guess when you guys started working with them, they were probably, I'm guessing, little smaller startup businesses that have just over time kind of expanded.
I think, nobody ever starts off big. I don't think anybody ever starts off.
When you guys started with these, were they they were small?
They were small. I mean, when I first came on, I think they were, with a couple of exceptions, they were pretty small, and that's why we really supported the small brewer when we first started, because most of your small brewers started off in a garage. If you look at their history and you look at their background, you talk to any of these people, especially the brewers, they started somewhere, probably not in a tool shed, but maybe in a garage or a basement, or if you look back, and everybody starts small. Nobody starts off with a big, huge company.
Yeah, well, I think when you start looking at like the old photos, Apple was in the garage. You look at like Amazon, Jeff Bezos, the iconic one of him just sitting in a room with like an Amazon spray painted sign.
Absolutely, they all started small, but I think it's just such a great company to work for, and we have I spent the past 3 years on the chamber board. Just recently got off the Chamber of Commerce board in Plattsburgh here, and really had some great exposure. But what makes our area unique and what makes it nice here is that we're so close to the Port of Montreal. And and this.
Do you do a lot of international shipping?
We do a lot of shipping from Europe and different parts. We have different types of malt and grains from the UK, Ireland, all kinds of places.
So again, because my knowledge of this is very elementary. You guys bring in, you have people that distribute to you, and then we have are distributing your distribution center to smaller places.
Yeah. So we basically we're customers of say like different folks, Thomas Fawcett, Baird's, different types of malts that are out there, and we have the distribution rights to go out and distribute to these folks and distribute on behalf of our customers.
So where does most of the malt come from? Is this like the flyover states, kind of like looking out the fields and stuff?
Yeah, it comes over. A lot of it comes from out in the western part of the U.S. and Canada, and so.
Yeah, Canada. I was gonna say they must have
Canada. Yeah, we import a lot from Calgary. Our Canada Malting, our sister plant, and our sister company, Canada Malting, we receive a lot of malt from Canada Malting. And
from Europe, do you import from Europe also? Or is it mostly export?
No, it's all import. It's imported from Europe.
And where's the big? I guess, like where would the malt or grains or anything come from Europe? Where's the major? Where would you import the most from? I mean,
probably from the
Germany?
UK, Germany.
Yeah.
That area.
I just didn't know what kind of typically what kind of weather is better for that, because obviously there's certain areas you can't probably grow it that well, and so a lot of it's soil or temperature or climate.
There's so much to that part of it that I just don't know about, but there was it's like hops. There's certain hops that grow well. Much of our hops comes from Yakima in that area out west, and in Washington State, and that whole that whole region is great for growing hops, and here, and I am not an expert on growing grain or hops or all that kind of good stuff, but there's a lot of, you can grow hops around here. Certain types of hops are available.
Okay.
But it's a very unique part of the business.
I think it's kind of like I've had like Dan and Nancy Vesco from Vesco's Vineyard on, and they were talking about where they get the grapes from, and they have some out there. I mean, you'll see Dan out there with his tractor, and he's doing all the work out there. But then they also bring stuff from the Finger Lakes, and there's certain regions they said it just grows it very. It
just grows better. It's like grapes. You go out to Western New York, or if you go out to Ontario, in the Niagara River region, that whole area. Of course, that's big on ice wine. They're big on ice wine, obviously, because of the climate.
Yeah.
So it's the growing aspect, and it comes from all over. But it's just funny, and like locally here, there's not a lot of farmers that probably would want to grow barley, because you really have to dedicate your fields to growing barley. You have to
was gonna say, well, a lot of it's what's your margins on it, especially with the size and like some of those places. If you have those massive farms that just have acres and acres and acres of land, and they could just at that point it's kind of a quantity game at a certain point. I mean, the quality's got to be there, but at a certain point you need the quantity. And
you need the quantity.
Like around here, it's like obviously Giroux, but you have a lot more like cow dairy farms and
and you really have to dedicate your fields. And again, not knowing a lot about farming, but you really have to give up your fields for last I heard like 5 to 6 years before you can turn the soil in order to make it. So you really, and there's not a lot of farmers that want to give up their land for that period of time. Mm-hmm. And then you have to, once you accumulate the barley, you have to malt it. So to build a malt house around...
talk about the malt process.
Well, the malt process, is basically involves a lot of different steeping, and introduces water and all kinds of elements. And basically, at the end of the day, the brewer, if you will, the craft brewer, they're looking for the nucleus of the barley. They're looking for the sugar spot, all the sweet stuff, all the stuff that's in the nucleus. So through the malt process, and much of our malting, at least locally here, is done in Montreal. So again, being part of the Canada malting family, Montreal is one of our biggest malt houses around here, and they're located in the port of Montreal, so that makes it nice too.
Now, what is as an Eastern Division operations manager, what's your role each day?
So my role each day, so I have 5 or 6 sites that I oversee on the East Coast. Champlain obviously being one of them. Mm-hmm. Right now, Florida, Texas, Chicago, Toronto. I have to think about Asheville, North Carolina, and then actually along with the director of operations. I also have Vancouver, BC, as well as a small spot in Calgary.
So you're traveling a lot to these places?
Used to travel before COVID. We used to travel quite a bit, but travels due to COVID-19, obviously that's on lockdown right now.
Do you find, so you would go probably to these plants for a couple days at a time or a week at a time and just kind of oversee and just so you're trying to make sure that the operations aspect is on point?
Yeah, make sure the operations is on point. We have, warehouse or distribution site managers at each location who are very talented and very skilled at what they do and all that kind of stuff. And some sites are bigger than others. We had a couple of people that work for us here in Champlain that actually, one individual, Josh Davison, it actually went from warehouse manager in Champlain or distribution site manager in Champlain, and now he runs the site in Florida. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of. Well, it's near Tampa, basically.
So each obviously plant has a manager, but you're the one that oversees all the operations.
Those, yeah.
So they have each individual has operations managers.
Each site has distribution site managers, and then the operation. I'm on the East Coast. We have my counterpart on the West Coast. So we have a Western Division operations manager.
This is 13 in total locations, you said?
Yeah, 13 actually. Yeah, 13 because we do have a third party in Halifax that we work with. So
now, all the ones you just listed, obviously Champlain being the smallest location out of the ones you listed.
Actually, Champlain's one of the larger ones. Vancouver.
From a city standpoint.
From a city standpoint, pretty small. Yeah, pretty small.
Are you generalizing though? Because when you said Tampa, you said it's probably in a small town outside Tampa.
Yeah, so we're actually for an example in Tampa. I use Tampa, but we're actually in Plant City. We're located within the limits of Plant City.
So would you be? Again, take a coin from Gary Douglas. You'd be looking at the Montreal aspect. It's so close to Canada.
So close to Canada, so we can tend to regionalize a little bit. And Champlain is Champlain. Champlain being a smaller town, obviously, but we call Champlain what it is, Champlain. Although we're located pretty close, as you know, to Burlington and Montreal and Plattsburgh and all that kind of stuff.
I would say a pretty healthy craft beer or beer kind of regions.
Yeah, pretty healthy, and much like North Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina. We're actually in the town or city limits of Fletcher, North Carolina, but we call it Asheville because it's so close. And Asheville, like Burlington, Asheville reminds me a lot of Burlington, Vermont, just because of the.
I've heard that. I've heard Asheville is a very kind of I don't want to. It kind of has the vibe of a. I've got a hippie town, but kind of
a little bit,
kind of like Burlington, a little easygoing,
and
colorful, bright music.
It's funny because I met some guys on a plane one time coming back from Asheville. And they were flying into Burlington just to have that same type of experience, but in Vermont.
A little warmer.
Yeah, a little warmer. So,
so from like an operation standpoint, this is something I've been trying to focus on a lot at the company here is, what do you think are some keys that you look at for operations? Like what's something that, I mean, because I'm going to take kind of your, we'll talk about Wyeth down the road too, but from an operation standpoint, what's things that you think are key to being successful at that?
Well, labor is a big part of it. I mean, if you don't have the labor, you have nothing, right? So, labor. I mean, location is critical. Obviously, location is key, and part of that, part of location is labor. I mean, everything really focuses around labor, which is really tough these days, as you know, because COVID-19 has really put a strain on our labor pool and things of that nature. But just labor in general. I never thought I'd see a day, at least, coming back locally here. Labor used to be easy when I first started. It was not an issue. But as we get into, and the region does their job with Bombardier and Nova Bus and all these great companies that we have here, labor can be a little bit on the tight side, which is tough.
Have you guys found that you've lost people, or is it or maybe not lost people, but maybe lack the ability to expand?
Not really the lack of ability to expand, not really lost people per se. It's just a little bit harder. So we really have to work with our staffing agency partners that we have locally, and we've done such things as direct hire. We've changed to some direct hire. We've offered, like many companies, incentives. We'd offered, and it's not just about money. Sometimes it's just about security, right? Mm-hmm. So.
Well, I've looked at like from our company too. A lot of it, being a small business is something that plays on your mind all the time. It's like, okay, can you, what's the salary or what's the benefits, and sometimes too, a lot of it is. I was looking at this. It's like, well, if we can't have certain benefits or we can't have a certain salary or whatever, what can we also add that's a value add that's not
right.
that, which might be flexibility or time. And I find that trying to kind of have a cohesiveness of place to work, but I'm not I hate micromanaging, and I hate, I'm not so, like, I always I like people having a little bit of freedom in their day.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like, okay, punch clock, leave. Like, I've never been wired like that. And to me, it's like, I think there's free flowing things in life, like, especially right now with, a couple of our staff have children, so you never know when their school is going to shut down, or all of a sudden they have to stay home because they have to watch a kid. And having that flexibility, I think, is a peace of mind also.
It is. It's a benefit too, and I think one of the benefits that we have around here anyway is our region. We live in a beautiful area. It's an attraction for a lot of people. Cost of living is huge. Mm-hmm. I mean, we can't control the cost of living as a company, but the cost of living does play a big role. I know that's really a big struggle on our West Coast sites. Somebody can be making a certain wage per hour. You can offer the best benefits in the world, but if they can't survive, if they can't live, and we're seeing a cultural change in that too, of course, as people have more of a base wage, as their base wage increases, things of that nature. But I like to say we're competitive, but again, having that flexibility, we're a great company to work for. Encourage anybody that wants to.
You can plug it, yeah.
Yeah, we'll plug it, right? That's what I'm here for, is to plug, to really plug. It's just an awesome company to work for, and just great people. I have had so much exposure to some really good people, not just the people I work with, but our customers too.
Do you have pretty low turnover then overall, like throughout the years?
I would say so. Yeah, Champlain in particular has pretty low turnover. We got some people that are experienced there, which is nice, and they tend to stay, which is good. We have some really dedicated folks there, and just great people, and of course with dedication comes experience. Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's. I saw this chart the other day, and it was talking about. It was kind of like a graph chart, or Again, we were talking about Corey Thompson earlier, who'd be yelling at me, but like the XY axis kind of thing, and it was the idea of like time versus wisdom. And it said when you're younger, your wisdom's lower, but your ability to like basically take risks or do dumb stuff is high. Yeah. And then because your wisdom's not that high, and then eventually it kind of goes the opposite way, where you gain more wisdom. Therefore, the dumb mistakes, you don't have to make those mistakes anymore, because you just like. I just know not to do that, and I don't have to stub my toe or waste my time trying to figure it out, because I already figured it out in my lifetime. So it's kind of, and again, I would say I still feel very young, but if I compared myself to I was 10 years ago, I've learned so much stuff where I'm like, I would never do this stuff I did when I was 20. And Caleb, what are you about, 20, 21?
No, I'm only 18.
18, jeez.
Yeah, he's 18.
Well, again, so word of wisdom from me, and your dad will probably be even better. Sometimes people don't listen to their parents, but he's going to give me more wisdom I'll give you, is that you do learn a lot of stuff, from the time you're 18. Your brain doesn't stop developing, I think, till 25 or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's crazy when you finally feel like you start making choices and decisions and you start thinking things a little more rational than you did it. Because you might be 18, you can be mature above your age kind of thing, but you still lack the wisdom you're going to gain over the next decades.
Oh, I've made a lot of mistakes, and huge. I mean, like anybody else, you look back and say, I wish I could have done things different, but I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, and the key is not to make them again and again, and that's the whole key. And I look at Caleb and offer some advice sometime, and of course he knows more than I do right now, which is kind of neat, but it's a little dig at him, but I don't mean to. We're very proud of him, and he goes to Paul Smith's and has that opportunity to go up there and experience that, which I wish I would have done at his age, and I took the hard road when it came to education and kind of did it, as I thanks to opportunities that,
So you went to Clinton and then Canton?
I went to Clinton first, which I think Clinton is a really good local resource. It's really good just to get the basics down anyway. And then I went to Canton. I actually did all my Canton stuff online as I was working.
How old were you when you got that degree?
Oh my God, probably like 30.
Okay,
31.
so you were, all right.
Yeah, I was an adult student, and I'd work all my hours during the day and be up to like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning working stuff online. Of course, online when I first got out in '88, when I first graduated, that wasn't available, right?
Yeah,
you had to go to school, and the education world has changed so much, and again, we're just lucky to have all these local resources.
So, Caleb, what do you get on the mic here? We'll get you involved. What's your major?
Disaster management and response.
Okay, so similar to you were emergency management.
Yeah, same thing.
Similar,
yeah.
And now, kind of expand on that. What is that?
So originally I was environmental science, and then once I got to Paul Smith, I kind of explored a little bit with the classes and which are gen eds and what's going to lead into, like maybe with your 3rd or 4th year. Disaster management and response kind of integrates chain of command. So those are your basic, like when you start your first couple of years, you'll learn about chain of command, getting into FEMA and how they run their structural kind of chain, again, SOPs and SOGs.
So when you say disaster, you're talking like natural disasters? Or
it can expand to, you can go small scale disasters to, Red Cross kind of involves in that too, the large scale.
Multi-agency.
Yeah. So that's kind of where it kind of branches out. Where do you want to go into the logistics side of it? Or do you want to go in kind of like the on-scene work with the...
So it would typically be something where you need, I'm going to use FEMA or the Red Cross, like where that's, I would say most of the time deal with like natural disasters or flooding or are you talking like economic, financial disasters? Is that part of it too? Or is there...
No, it's more of the natural disasters.
Okay.
It can branch off into multiple kind of areas, so you don't have to stick with the large disaster. You don't have to go down to like Florida, or you don't have to go to these places where you've just had a big flood, or you can also stick like up here. We've had small scale disasters. My father can probably help me on a couple of them, but
ice storm.
Ice storm.
What was that, 25 years this year? 22?
20 something years ago.
Like
I tried to block it out.
98.
In 98.
Yeah.
But even then, that's a great example of you don't have to go far to use that kind of area. One goal that I'm going for is to be a forest ranger. So all they require is, you have a certain amount of credits in environmental science, but that kind of degree is awesome for, we have a lot of wildfires. The one that I can remember is, I just did a project on it, is in 2018, there was a wildfire in Altona on the Flat Rock, just stemming from, I believe, a campfire that involved multiple agencies from Quebec and from Vermont too. And not only our county, I know Paul Smith even went there, and that's an 1.5-hour drive. So you can find to use that major around this area, and that's why I found it so cool. And I can integrate, the credit hours that I've already put in before college into that degree, and I have that drive from what he's done for over 35 years.
Well, you take so logistically, meaning trying to get the emergency services in and trying to figure out the chain of commands of who comes, because I know and we'll get into the EMT, but I know there's I say call it first call, but then you have backup, and then you have backup, and you have backup for their station. It should because a good thing is we work with obviously like Vermont, and then you work with Canada, so
Yeah.
like it's not uncommon to see Cole or Hemmingford come through the
No.
border,
No.
or I'm assuming vice versa,
Vice-versa, yeah.
and then or Albert coming over, or Swanton, or whatever it might be to come over and relieve,
Yeah, we have in our mutual aid system in Clinton County, we have 4 Canadian departments and 2 Vermont departments, and as a deputy coordinator in my what they call a battalion area, that I have an area like the other deputy coordinators do for Clinton County Emergency Services. But so those 4 Canadian departments and the 2 Vermont departments are in my areas of responsibility, so to speak.
so you're coordinating the county for the most part, or?
Coordinating that battalion, that area. Eric
Wow,
Day,
okay.
who is our director of emergency services, is the ultimate coordinator, fire coordinator, but emergency services director actually is his title, and just a great guy, and we're lucky to have him. Just a wealth of information. And
We were talking before. I mean, I know Corey Thompson's big with the EMT, and and I look at, and obviously, I mean, like we said before, Alice, who just passed, I know she was very instrumental in a lot of, I think the one thing that I look at with EMT in the fire department is very, very, very close-knit individual or group of individuals.
Right.
And I don't think I've ever heard anybody say something bad about another EMT or firefighter. Typically, it's like anything. Just if I asked you a question, you talked about them, like great person. I think, do you find, now you guys are both in it, right? Because you're
Yeah, we were both in EMS.
So being part of that, I mean, is the kind of the cohesiveness of that group, and obviously branches out to other stations, is that just something that, like I said, is just kind of a bond that's tough to replicate?
it's kind of like a brother-sister type thing. I mean, sometimes it does. Sometimes you can get frustrated with your brother or sister. If you have a brother or sister, you don't know what I'm talking about. But for the most part, when the chips are down, everybody's there for each other, whether it be within your own department. Both Caleb and I are part of the Champlain Fire Department, and we're both part of Champlain EMS because we had to separate just due to the current law doesn't allow fire departments to bill. So we separated that agency and made Champlain Moore's EMS. So you see more collaboration, if you will, especially on the EMS side, because many towns just don't have the EMS volunteers. So now we're turning into more of a paid environment to where you can, but in order to pay people, you have to make some type of income, right?
Yeah.
Just like you guys, you can't sell a house for free. So in our case, we have to charge, for that service. And the calls are actually, when we first started,
So you would bill people for, like, they call it EMT for hospital, or
for transports,
ambulance or
just for
something?
transports.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's different levels, primarily 2 different levels, like basic life support and advanced life support, that we bill for different rates, if you will. And for the most part, I think like 95% of the time, the insurance company, your personal insurance will cover that service, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the insurance companies like it when the volunteers do it for free because but those days are rapidly going away.
Do you have staff at Champlain Moore's EMS?
Yeah, we have actually during the day we have a BLS and an ALS provider at the Champlain station, and at the Moore's EMS station on Route 11. And that's great. It's so for the volunteers such as Caleb and myself. Well, Caleb's going to school, but if I'm working today, obviously I can't go on a 2.5 hour EMS call. So it's having that reassurance that somebody's there. And actually, we've expanded those hours into the nighttime hours. And I think eventually you're going to see it. We always have somebody on 24/7 in terms of a
At least on
provider,
call.
at least on call. And there's always people on call, but there's actually people at the Champlain station 24/7. Moore's is staffed primarily during the day, and of course these people are doing great things. I mean, and that's another avenue too, where you meet some awesome people, because we're hiring people not just in the town but outside of the town, and they could be, a lot of them work for Morrisville EMS, for an example, or Osable EMS, or Lion Mountain EMS, Dannemora EMS.
They'll drive up and station there?
Yeah, they'll drive up, and so they're working or they may be working at the hospital. Mm-hmm. Many of the providers that we've had just go on to become nurses and take other fields, if you will, in the healthcare industry, and they'll bring it to the next level. Most recently, some of our advanced providers took it upon themselves to do a paramedic course. And now they're New York State paramedics, which is phenomenal.
So what would happen if someone calls 911 if it's in your region, that automatically gets dispatched or it gets routed to Champlain EMS?
Yeah, so if someone calls 911, it goes through the Clinton County Dispatch over here,
Yep.
located on the what I call the new base on
Yeah,
Plattsburgh.
I know Mike Cross very well.
Mike Cross,
Mike's
Mike's a good dispatcher. Yeah,
Yep.
Mike Cross, and
He's a good guy.
yeah, great guy. We got some awesome dispatchers. I used to actually be a dispatcher when I was working part time at Wyeth, and got to implement with Jim King and all these other folks. I worked for Jim King at the time, just before Eric came along. Got to implement, like advanced EMD, which is emergency medical dispatching. Mm-hmm. But so the call goes through the CAD system, computer aided dispatching, and through a whole series of past work, we'll call it, it gets routed. So if you call from your residence or even your cell phone now, they can pinpoint your location, find an address, and they'll know through a combination of technology and experience what agency to send where. And if that agency is not available, they'll send another agency.
What's because you guys are on call. Phone rings 911.
Yeah.
From the time it goes to 911 to the time someone's on the ground, what's rough? And obviously this depends on where you're traveling, but what's the time frame of the response time?
Our average, I'll use Champlain for an example. The average response time in Champlain in that area is 3 minutes out. So in other words,
Wow.
yeah, dispatch. So from the time the call comes in, this is average time. Now this is going by what Corey tells us, right? Being a math teacher, he's got to have his numbers right. So
It's got to be under 10 at least.
it's got to be
right?
under 10. Yeah, it's a 10. But no, Corey just mentioned it the other day that our average response time for Champlain EMS, and I think it's probably less than that for Morrisville, even or about the same, is less than 3 minutes. Well, that's pretty good.
So that means leaving the station? Or does that mean...
From the time the call comes in to the time the ambulance is on the road.
Wow.
Response time is 3 minutes.
Now, sorry, when you say volunteer, does that mean you're at your house, call comes in, you're heading just straight to the house?
Sometimes we'll head to the scene. Sometimes we'll go to the station. Depends on where you live. We got volunteers that live all over the place. In a case such as Morrisville EMS, they have, much like Champlain, their combination. They're primarily paid personnel, but they also have volunteers too. So it's a combination of both.
So when people are there people always at the station ready to leave?
Yes.
Okay, so
That's
when
the
a
EMS
3 minute
stations. Yeah.
Okay, so 3 minutes. So do you volunteer to go sit at the station, or is that mostly on call?
I don't as much anymore because I'm I like being home and doing my stuff at home, and of course, as you know, when you own a house, there's always something to do,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
The realtor tells you it's going to be great, but at the end of the day, there's always something to do. So
Always. Yep.
as I get older, I found when I was growing up, though, when I was Caleb's age, I lived at the fire station. I mean, absolutely lived there. Of course, I didn't have a house or all these responsibilities now that I have to worry about.
Yeah.
So I see him doing the same thing. I get frustrated too because I see him hanging out at the EMS station and hanging out at the fire station and he's doing some great. He's just doing some awesome things. That the key, I think, that I find it amazing is that when I was growing up, I always wanted to join and be with the guys and the girls in the fire station. But I had to wait till I was 18. And back then, in 1987 or 88, I had to wait. There was a waiting list. And now there's no waiting list. And not only that, Caleb got to join when he was 16 because we have a junior program both on the EMS side and the fire side. And I keep telling him, I said, you don't know how lucky you are to have those 2 years,
So I was going to say, you probably learned quite a bit in the last 2 years?
Yeah, so branching back to what you said earlier about the maturity thing, I think that anybody that's around 16 or 17 in your district, if your fire department or your EMS agency offers that luxury to have a junior program or join it and kind of learn, I think that's amazing. I recently just took the exterior and interior fire class through Clinton County, which will also branch into my college, which I didn't know at first. It gives me 6 college credits to be able to be transferred in, and the county and the district pays for it. So at 18, I've made these accomplishments that most people don't have, and you kind of earn like a self-respect for your community. Mm-hmm. I know people like to when they get my age and get out of high school, they like to leave. Some people don't like to stay in your hometown, but I actually found it very hard to leave because we've made these connections. He's introduced me to people that you would never see. So I think that you kind of, when you join an EMS or fire agency, you earn that great respect, and you kind of learn a lot of things that you probably wouldn't know if you were even 25 or 26. And I've expanded that to Paul Smith's now too. So I think it's a great resource to have.
So while you were in school, you were going off on calls at night or off hours?
Yeah, so
So it was normal?
Up at Paul Smith's, you do, they have an option to join the
But
fire
even
department.
at Northeastern?
Yes.
So you did the same thing?
Northeastern, so when you do join a junior agency, depending on the bylaws or
The rules.
more of the rules, if you don't really get the thing, they make a set of rules where you have to follow, and one of the ones was you can't leave school, which I 100% understand.
Oh, but like after school?
Yes,
Yeah.
anytime
Evenings and
between
things?
between like ours was 9 o'clock. After 9 o'clock, you can't respond on a school night.
Okay.
But if you're on a weekend and a call comes out and hey, I want to go to this, all right, so you kind of just hop in the car and
So you're
go to
eager
the
to go?
Yeah, he's eager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you because being second or third generation?
Second.
Second generation. Why'd you get into it?
It's going to sound bad, but I don't think it was really a choice to whether I wanted to or not. Corey, I often talk about Corey, and a great man. I grew up, he was there the day I was born. So, Corey used to come down to the house, and, my father and my mother used to leave for the call, and Corey would watch me on the porch, and you just kind of grow up around it. I used to love, going to fires when I was small and just sitting in the truck and being able to sit there for 4 or 5 hours and just watch. It was something that most people don't do, but I found fascinating. So growing up around it was kind of the head point to why I joined.
So most kids turning 16 want to get their license. You wanted to join the EMS?
That was the first thing I did was filled out. I had the application filled out a week ahead for fire department, and then once you turn 17, for our agency at least, you can join the EMS squad.
So now being a little over 2 years involved, what's your favorite thing so far about it?
Just the fact that I can still grow into it. A little scared the fact that you can get to a high point and then you can go anything below, but I'm still learning. So being able to experience this where, I have the time off from college sometimes, but also integrating my studies with it, it's absolutely amazing. It's fun to have those experiences. I'm having a great time home. So I think that it's one of the most rewarding things that I've ever done.
I look at something when you talk about like hitting a certain ceiling at certain points, like whether it be climbing a ladder or whatever. I think you never stop. I think you should never stop learning. This is anything. So I think at a certain point, if you start doing it and you're like, you might know everything you need to know in a year from now, like from the day-to-day standpoint. But then what happens is if you're really eager about it, I find your brain starts going layers and layers deep into the field, and then you start finding things that you could improve on, or you start finding ways to maximize efficiency with everything. And then next thing you know, like you could, in theory, take whatever you guys know now is common and you could flip it on its head, and all of a sudden like, wow, we never came up with that. Like very innovative within that field.
Yeah, it's true. It's like Caleb was kind of re-inspired me. I mean, not that I was uninspired or anything of that nature, but seeing him go through, especially the firefighter 1 class, we went through a thing called Essentials of Firemanship, which was good. It was great training at the time, but it was at the time. And now I see what he's gone through over the last year to get his what they call a firefighter 1 status, and now the Clinton County has the fire training tower, for an example, on the base next to the emergency services building. Some awesome instructors. We have great instructors in this area, in this county. But it was a tough class for him. It was how many weeks long? It was
5 months. So
Wow.
your BFO starts off just exterior. You can do 3 months of BFO, and then depending on if your health is good enough or if you want to continue, you can go to your 2-month IFO class. That's where you get into the fun stuff, as Nick Payne calls it, one of the instructors that was leading the class. The thing is, with you talked about the old times, is when we first started the class in the IFO part, interior was kind of downplayed. All you needed was what he said, a heartbeat, and that's true. Mm-hmm. Now you've got all these, I'm sure you can jump in on this, Dad, you kind of got all these innovations that are, and the regulations are insane now with, OSHA. It regulates some of that, FEMA. But I think that taking the class it opens up to a wide variety of opportunities, whether that's branching in if you want to go to the academy for paid fire department, if you want to work for Plattsburgh City, or you want to just stay volunteer, you have that option now. But yeah, that's
And
kind
you
of
got to work with some good people around the county that he really got to be close with. Of course, when you spend 5 or 6 months, 2 nights a week, working with somebody or working with a group of people. So we got some really good, talented young firefighters out there and emergency people out there.
Kind of my business and in your business too, it's just relationships and knowing people and kind of learning from people. And I think that's the more you can do that. That was something that you kind of go back and say, like, what could I have done better when you're younger? I think one of the was getting more involved quicker. And it took me a while to start getting involved and really going out and meeting people. And then once you meet people, then that's what I have fun with the podcast, because you bring people on whether you know them or not, but then you get to pick their brain. And there's a lot of, I think the one thing I've learned now through 178 episodes, there's a lot of talented people around here, but everybody's different, but everybody's very similar in certain ways, but they have their own spin on stuff, and then kind of hear perspectives and hear ways that I can look at and make. I make a lot of connections amongst people and amongst individuals, and I think one of the things I love that you just said before is not like, again, this is not right for everybody, but moving away. I grew up in Chazy, went to Plattsburgh State, and I live in Morrisonville now. So if I had to really package everything, at no point in my life did I ever want to move away. And I think one of the things I always like seeing is and I think there's a benefit to going away. I think there's a benefit to going out and learning and experiencing, and I don't downplay that. But I always get really excited when people decide to come back to the area.
Me too. Yeah.
Because I think that one of the things that I've thought about a long time, and I know this is a lot of people have had the same idea, is that you're going to learn a lot in life, and you're going to learn a lot. And Chris, you're still learning stuff, and I'm still learning stuff, and everybody's learning stuff. But I look at, like, you could go and bring I use a LeBron James quote, to take your talents to South Beach. You could take your talents or whatever you learn to some other part of the country. But then I always look at, why can't you just keep them here and help improve the area? Yeah. And I think there's a lot of good people that if they recognize all the benefits and all the opportunities, and I think that it's, the one thing I like about the North Country is I do attribute us a little bit of kind of like a Rocky Balboa a little bit. Yeah. That you go to some of these places that are well established. I kind of like being the underdog in certain spots, and I kind of like having the the uphill climb and trying to really kind of grind and make something of the community. And this has been happening for decades and decades and decades of good people fighting the fight to keep improving the area. But I think the next generation, it's like take the baton and kind of run the next leg of the race and really try to expand on that. And that's something that, and Chris, I'm sure you can allude to this, having been in the the community for years or decades, that you could attribute that.
Yeah, I mean, I've obviously been very involved in the community functions and not just on the fire or emergency services side, but just the quadricentennial for different in the town of Champlain, just doing different stuff around the town. Knights of Columbus. I mean, enjoy being part of the whole just the community. I think that's a big part of it. And it really struck me, I think, in the last 3 years since I was on the chamber board. I, again, just recently just got off the board. I did my term, but I'm sad to see it going away, because really got to meet some good people, and I thought I knew the North Country really well, but that opened up a whole new experience for me, and just seeing and understanding some of our people and some of the businesses and what they've gone through to get where they are today, and just and just looking at the talent that we have in this area, and seeing what the impact, like, the border has. Of course, growing up in Champlain, the border, I miss the days where we could cross the border freely, and hopefully those days will come back again. But and I have, like many of us, we can trace our roots back to the eastern townships of Canada and things of that nature. So and I do miss my Canadian friends and both on the fire service side and just my golfing buddies and all that kind of stuff.
How does that happen with the fire? Are you guys able to when everything was so down?
We're still considered essential.
Okay, so you could pass all throughout, and they could come down.
And what we're finding though too is that, like, I mentioned four of the fire departments on the Canadian side. Hemingford, for the most part, is pretty good. They'll come down. St. Bernard will come down, and currently we can go up there as we're essential. However, we do have a couple of departments, Lacole and St. Paul, who their municipalities, they're not saying they can't come down, but they're really putting a restriction on them because they are quite concerned about the spread of COVID-19 and now the variant. So they're not saying they can't, but it's just changed. You can tell it's changed a lot, and I'm hoping that I hope someday we'll be out of this mess.
Yeah. No, I think the free flowing and you don't, again, having been a little bit more in tune to what's going on. Again, as you get older, you get more involved. And I was kind of joking. I was telling my wife the other day, we're sitting there watching the news, where my 20s, I never watched the news.
Yeah, right.
But now in my 30s, like, you got the kids, I got young kids, so the kids are doing stuff, and you're like, the news is on, and you're just watching it, and you're watching the stories, and you're watching. But if I'm being more involved, you start realizing how important Canada is. Besides, like, when I was a kid, it's like going up to the baseball games and going up to shows and concerts and going up to eat or something. But then you realize how much actual business to business is done all the time over the borders.
Every day.
And
it's amazing.
And I think it's, one of the most passed through borders in Canada. I mean, I think probably the one down by Niagara's might be a little more.
Yeah, I think we're at the third or fourth largest land port, commercial land port too, and the commercial side. Yeah. Luckily, our commercial business, they kept the commercial's been pretty good for the most part. I hope they don't restrict us on that part of it. But again, just across the border, I mean, obviously, if you look at me, I like to eat. I like to eat well, and I miss going to just having a place to go up. And when you live along the border, as close as Caleb and I do, I mean, he's at Paul Smith's right now, but as being so close to the border, we can see it from our house. Mm-hmm. So obviously, just to go up to Hemmingford, or for a bite to eat, or
Wits End or something.
Wits End, go up to Wits End, or up to Montreal, or just to have that. I truly do miss it. Or going to Club 2000 and play some golf.
Yeah.
And
I haven't played that course in many years. How often do you get up there, or where are you getting up there?
Caleb and I used to go up quite a bit when he was learning how to golf. That's one of the regrets I have, is that I didn't start golfing earlier. Yeah. But Caleb started at his Northeastern golf club team and just learned some great skills and learned the etiquette behind golfing. And he taught me some stuff too. I wish I would have started when I was his age.
Matt's still coaching for that?
Yes.
Yeah, Matt's a great guy too.
Great guy, awesome coach.
He was when I started playing golf, I started as a 10-year-old, and I played a ton for about a decade.
Yeah. And
then between work and school and kids, I took, I'd say, close to 7 to 8 years just off.
Yeah.
And last season was my second season back in, and I could see myself getting the bug again.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those, like we talked about learning. I like to learn, but I like to challenge myself, and I like to pick goals that are really unobtainable, and you're never going to master golf.
You're never going to master golf.
So it's kind of one where you could sit there and just like slam your head against, whatever playing it, but it's the game that you can you can see improvement, and then it's So I find that there's a lot of nuances with golf and life, and I've just always loved golf, but to hear you play, like growing up playing it, like it's such a. I think every kid should learn to play golf.
I can remember the first time I played. I got into actually the chamber tournament, and I was working at Wyeth at the time, and asked to play on the team, and I just dreaded it for weeks. I mean, went out, got a set of golf clubs, and just practiced, and I was horrible, still am, but I did not want to be embarrassed in front of these guys, and guys who I admired, and I was number 4 to tee off and on my team, and thank God the first 3 guys, they just shot them into the woods. One guy just missed it completely. So after that, I got into it. And then growing up, we actually started playing at Harmony, out of all places. That's where Caleb and I learned how to be hackers, if you will. But what a great golf course, and the fellow that owns it,
Fuller.
Yeah, it's Stephen Fuller. Had just taken over at the time. And really took Caleb under his wing, but what a great place to go, have a beer after too, and have a bite to eat.
So when I learned golf, my first couple times playing golf was up there when it was back in the Port Kent days.
Yeah.
And it was 9 holes, I think, at the time.
9 holes.
And you put money in an envelope. It was the honor system.
Yeah.
And you went out and played, and I remember these being these big mounds in the center of the fairway. And it was kind of a, you look at it now, it was just like a little, old track, and it wasn't until recent when Harmony came up that I finally put 2 and 2 together. Like, oh wow, this was the course that I played as a kid.
Because
I would love to go back in time and see what that course looked like the first day I ever played golf. Because as a kid, you don't really, your memory doesn't, you're just going out and hitting a golf ball.
Right.
And And then adding obviously the wedding or the event space, and then adding the restaurant and adding all that had elevated it. And then you started to look at, because back then they didn't have those 4 holes built.
No.
So my guess it was probably just woods there before they added
probably
around.
woods. I mean, that was before I started playing there. But we've had some great times at that golf course, and not so great times too. I mean, Caleb, when he was young, he'd get frustrated and he'd get upset. It wasn't until people like Corey and Matt Fredette and when he really accelerated is when he got onto the Northeastern golf team. I mean, that just, because they teach you so much more than just hitting the ball. It's so much about the etiquette. And he was correcting me. He's like, Dad, you're not supposed to do this. You're supposed to. Was
Dustin up there when you started?
Yeah.
So Dustin was the pro.
Yeah.
Now it's Andy.
Yep, Andy. So we when I started too, Dustin was up there, and Dustin Burgard. The one thing that I would give Dustin credit when I was a kid was Dustin and Matt were both very they were golf like they were true golfers, and they were but they were respectful golfers, and they were like, listen, you're going to learn the etiquette, you're going to learn the basics, you're going to learn all the stuff that even to this day I bring with me, but you just had good habits from the start. And one of the things that I say every year when I play golf with everybody, and Dustin taught me this. Dustin, if I asked Dustin, he probably wouldn't remember him ever saying this to us, but he goes, anytime you fix a divot on the green, fix another one. Like fix yours and fix one. The same thing? Yeah, so you fix one and fix another one, because people don't fix them. So it's like, just do your part, do yours, but then grab the one next door, like 10 feet away that someone didn't grab. Because it's just taking care of the course. And I always put your divot back and just take care of the course. And of course, I believe in karma. So take care of the course. You might get a lucky bounce here and there, because God knows I need it. But
yeah, we're seeing that. Caleb used to make me fix my own divots, but I made a lot of them. So North Country Golf Club, that's another. I mean, we're just lucky. We got a lot of great golf courses around here. Mm-hmm. Both in the.
Well, how far is the North Country from your house?
Probably about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Probably from Andy's there, and I mean, just a great group of people that. We're lucky to have that in our town. It's just an awesome place to play.
Well, actually it's this tournament right here. We run this every year, and it's a fun tournament. It's a moneymaker that we do for local children's organizations, and we've done it 3 years in a row. And this was the first year we actually expanded it to the size that we want, which is 24 players. But Andy, we moved it up to Northeastern, and Andy was fantastic. We had a great time. We had nothing but positive, from the players, and Andy was, very welcoming, and they have just a great setup for there.
We did the chamber golf tournament this year.
Yeah, yep. Which was packed. And when we did it, and I think they're going to, I'm not on board anymore, but they're going to move it around a little bit, or at least put it out to bid anyway. But Adirondac's a great place to go to, and all that kind of stuff. But I was pretty proud last year when we had it having been to, I think they had it at Adirondack the last prior few years.
Oh my God, yeah, since I played.
Yeah, so the one thing, and nothing against Adirondack, but the one thing that was very well run is if you look at, I keep saying Northeastern, North Country, yeah. You just with the deck, with the bar, with the event space, there's just a lot of. It's nice to go in and have a place that it's welcoming and that you can kind of go in and just feel. It's just an easy in and out.
It is.
You walk into the clubhouse, like the club shop, pro shop, but then you walk by everybody, and everybody's central right there. And I think that I just thought it was a fun event. I mean, it's always a fun event, but I think, of course, maybe it's nostalgia too, because that's where I grew up playing. It was kind of cool to see everybody go up north to go see it.
And I think that's the big thing too, is you look at these golf courses. There's so much history behind these golf courses. To see speaking on a business side, to see how these folks have developed. Both North Country Golf Club and of course, like everybody else, are struggling. But Harmony, we just spoke about Harmony, and of course, Bluff Point has a huge amount of history behind it, not just as just as a golf course.
I got a book over there, the 100-year anniversary.
Yeah,
which actually only brought it up to 1990, which is funny because that's 30 years ago.
30 years ago, yeah, it doesn't seem that long ago, right?
Well, it's funny when you look at the people in there, the names and the pictures. I know some of the people personally now, and to see them 30 years ago as young golfers, club champions, and everything else.
No Trombley's in there. Not a lot of us Trombley's in there, right?
No, we didn't. Yeah. I don't think we had a. I don't know about you. Me and my father we weren't winning club championships, but you have I know Tom Rayville, and then Mary Fry has passed since, but she was the reigning club champion when that was written, and so wasn't Tom Rayville. And
I have to read that book. I have.
I'll you flip through it before you leave.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
There's a lot of cool. Well, they talk the some of just the ways that Bluff was cut.
Yeah.
Some of the holes were a little bit different, and the guy that designed it, A.W. Tillinghast, designed Bethpage Black, and they started talking about how some of the he was very big on putting bunkers out. So that's why you look at Bluff, they have a few bunkers, like greenside bunkers that are really 30, 40 yards away.
Yeah.
And that was kind of an iconic style of him. And they had a book about Ken Ventura coming up and playing kind of an exhibition up here. And it was just kind of neat to see. And obviously you've heard like presidents had played it. Babe Ruth played it.
Babe Ruth,
you know.
yeah, I heard that. And just, I think that's, obviously we're not going to meet any probably legends like that anytime soon. But that's the great thing with golf, too, is that one thing I've always admired is you get to meet great people and, work with, you get to really, you get to collaborate with a lot of people, get to meet some good people. And
Well, I think I think the one thing about golf that is so true is that you really find out a person by playing golf with them because it challenges the person, but it, allows. You play with somebody. It takes 4+ hours to play a round of golf typically. Like if you go out with four people and just play a normal round, it's probably 4.5 hours. And to sit there and see them at their best when they hit a good shot, to see them at their worst when they like blow up on a hole, to see them in between holes, to see them like how they conduct themselves, you find that you really start to understand people. And we talk like business, like some of my best relationships that I forge with people that are in business now, it's like they're my golf buddies, and and they're I would deem very good, high achieving people locally, and to go play with them on the golf course and see another side, but then also a similar side, and kind of put the nuances together. Like Andy Lamonto works over here, and I play golf almost weekly with him in the summer. And Andy's very good at what he does, but then I can go bust his balls on the golf course, and it's like we have a good. There's always the fun level of that too, where you put
take a guy like Corey Thompson. He's a pretty serious guy when it comes to golf. He gets he gets in that zone and he likes to have fun, but he also gets into that, and he's a numbers guy, so he's always calculating, right? He's always
Well, I always rag on Corey because I think I never played on the golf team because I played baseball as a kid.
Yeah.
But he was the golf club coach or whatever back in the day, and a lot of my friends because we had a big wave of like kids around my age that started to play golf, so it was kind of I think it was enough peer pressure to try to get that to go like amongst the school. Yeah. And Corey naturally was a young guy at the time and was like golf, and it's like I'll go up and do it. And I still have buddies to this day that would just bust on Corey because just as we all do, and so I always laugh when Corey's the golf coach because now knowing him back then and back now and but he had an impact on bringing it at least to Shazy. I don't know if they still do it at all, but one of the only golf tournaments I ever won too was with Corey, his uncle Don, and Danny Harriman.
Yeah, and
we ended up winning. I think it might have been one of the Shazy hockey tournaments or something, and we played lights out, made the putts. We had the red tees at the time.
Oh, he told me about that.
And we eagled almost every hole that we had a red tee on because we played them on the par fives, and it was because of the red tee, you only have one swing, so it's like hopefully the guy swinging the red tee has a decent shot, and all four of us when we had that red tee just crushed drives, were like perfect. So it was.
See Caleb do that a lot too, and I like the calculation. Like if you know your course well enough, like many of the guys, Corey, Caleb, for an example, North Country, they know each hole, they can anticipate, each shot and everything. So that's really cool, and especially when you into a tournament, you talk about red tees. It's like okay. You could tell the guys that go all the time, and I'm not one of them. But they're like, we're going to use the red tees on this. We're going to do this, and they have a calculated plan. But the thing with golf is it doesn't always go that way.
No, that's
Well,
one of the things this year when I was focusing on it was like, and I was doing the math in my head. I'm like, why would I hit a driver off this hole? Like if I hit a perfect driver, I hit a wedge in. But if I can hit like a hybrid that I know is going to be in play 80+% of the time. And have an 8-iron in or whatever, just like simple math.
Yeah.
Like, because to me, if I can get some like bogey golf for a lot of people is very good. So I'm like, instead of killing myself and hitting 3 off the tee, just get it in play, hit it near the green, and then if I can get up and down, great. If I don't, I still get a bogey.
Yeah.
And in theory, if you do that throughout the round, and it's so much easier said than done because you have that drive and you're like, man, I feel like just ripping this thing down and having like a
I'm a lefty too, so Caleb's a righty, but I'm a lefty, so that makes it even more challenging depending on where you go too. I mean, I could go up, not a lot of people like to go to Altona, but once in a while we like to go up to Altona just because it's close by, and there's not a lot of left-handed holes. There's a couple, but not a lot of left-handed holes up there, right? So.
Like I would argue North Country is a very good lefty
course.
It is.
Yes.
Almost every dog leg goes left at North Country. So it's kind of just go up, open that thing up, and just hook it around the corner or slice it around the corner.
Yeah.
Where typically we're trying to hit you're trying to close the face and have this hit the sharp hook, and you guys just let it rip.
It's a funny sport because come October, November, whenever you give up, it's like, okay, I'm done golfing. I've had enough. But then you just can't wait to get out. Like right now, I can't wait to get out there again. So
Well, the problem is right now you start seeing the pros come back out and they're playing like the Century Tournament. Next week's Sony. And
they make it look so easy too.
Well, I guess this past week, was it the top 5 all-time lowest relative to par was this past week?
Yeah,
And
I heard that.
I didn't
see
watch.
it.
I didn't watch anything, but my guess was knowing the course, because I know the course having watched it fairly well. If there's no wind, which sounds like there wasn't much wind, I mean,
Right.
it's literally just bomb drives because the fairways are wide open, and then just I'm sure the greens were very receptive.
Yeah.
And it was a par 73. So you start looking at some of these guys going out and just like dropping 61s like they're playing,
Oh man,
which
they
is
make
a
it look so
68 or
easy.
69.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about bogey golf. Andy always preaches bogey golf for the high school team because, what is it, 37 on the front for your par? I mean, 37 and then you have 9. That's only 46 is pretty good for a high school tournament.
Well, I mean, what's your number 1 and 2 guys shoot typically?
I mean, if I'm going, like, if you're talking about my high school,
Yeah,
the lowest I ever got in the front was a 42.
Okay.
I mean, you see new kids like a past alumni for 2 years now, Ben Lloyd. I mean, he shot.
Oh, yeah, I know Ben.
30,
Yeah.
39.
Great golfer.
Yeah, very
39,
good golfer.
38. I mean, that's what the level is now. You see a couple people from Saranac are doing it now.
You were excited this past last year. He was like number 3 for a few weeks
Yep.
anyway, and he was so excited.
Matt
Yeah.
Fredette's son is number 2 when I was number 3.
God, I can't believe Matt's kids are that
And
old.
then he
now.
went to Saranac Lake, and no, where'd you go? And it ruined it all.
So sectionals.
Oh, did you play Saranac in?
Yep, sectionals
Yeah.
with Saranac in,
Yeah.
and I had always heard about how hard Saranac in was, and we beautiful day. It was an awesome day, and the cutoff. I remember Brian's kid Jacob was playing, and Jacob didn't have a good game. You could see when he came off the course. You can see his facial expressions. He shot a 99, and the cutoff was 99, and my score was 100.
To make sectional or make states?
day 2.
Day
Day
two.
2, and then day 2 would go to states.
Oh, gotcha. Yep.
And yeah, I was one away, and then that's when I hugged Matt Fredette, and that was my last game at high school. And then what the funny part is now I play for Paul Smith's. Paul Smith's home course is Saranac Inn.
Oh,
So
really?
now I get to go back and play it for free, and I have to have fun. And
Nice.
Yeah.
I played it once this year, and I don't know. I broke 100, but
the hard course.
I mean those greens, like the greens are tough, and the thing is with the green, because you're up in the mountains, like any of the Lake Placid courses, everything breaks more. It doesn't always break the way you think it's going to break.
They're fast too.
And yeah, and they're fast, and it's a narrow course. And I remember getting up on the first hole, and I hit it long in 2, and I was kind of up by the cart path, and I think I walked away with a 7 because I chipped on. I'm like, oh, that's an okay chip.
Yeah.
Hit, rolled right through down to the bunker. I'm like, oh my god, 'cause it's just hard. It's fast, and
When you hear Saranac Inn too, when I played for NCCS, I mean, okay, we're going to Saranac Inn. We laid down in the bus. 45 minutes later, I'm like, where are we? We're not even there.
yeah,
Saranac Inn, people, I never knew about it. It's up in Saranac Lake. I mean, that's
it's-
Lake
yeah.
Clear kind of.
yeah.
But I mean, I never
long
knew
trip.
about. Yeah, I never knew about that course, and now to see it, it's
It's a
totally.
long
worth
trip
it.
back home too. If you
don't
had
play
a
well?
bad day playing, right?
Yeah.
At
Well, it's
least
just like the casino. You have a long trip back if you didn't win anything. So
That's it.
an hour and 45 minutes is worth it to think about your game. But I think people should always get up there and try that course. It's a beautiful course. I love it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's challenge. I played that one, and have you played Westport?
I played Westport first time. Played Westport was actually like 2 years ago. I finally got a chance to go there. What a beautiful spot.
Yeah.
Of course, Westport's a beautiful town anyway. But
Well, the one thing about Westport, nobody's ever up there.
No.
So typically, when you go play, it feels like you're playing by yourself.
It does.
Like you might see a couple people, but it's not packed. It's not like you're waiting on tee boxes to hit.
yeah,
And the front nine, relative to the back nine, is a totally different course.
yeah,
The back nine narrows down, and all of a sudden, it's like if you can escape with a decent score on the front, you might have an opportunity. As soon as you hit that 10th hole, and it's that little narrow dog leg right with the trees
Yeah.
up with that like out of bounds all right, and it's like. You know,
Yeah.
it gets nerve wracking when on a couple of those holes.
the last time I played there, I couldn't wait to get off. I'm like, okay, I'm good for now. But then again, too, I can't wait to go back and try it again, right? And
Yeah,
it's like that's how you learn. Sometimes you don't always have to use a driver at Westport either. Sometimes, especially if you're a lefty,
yeah.
you got to make every shot count. So
I was gonna say I hit a lot of hybrids, and I've
Yeah.
even a couple times like it's not hard to hit a long iron and put a long iron out there and have a second longer club in, but at least you know you're in play. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's a smart decision. And
I hate losing. I hate looking for balls now. As the older I get, I hate looking for balls in the woods, and that's why I use Kavanaugh Realty balls.
you're
With your name
guaranteed-
on, you know what I mean?
you're guaranteed. And most of them, I
Yeah.
think, say if found, return to Joey Trombley.
That's
So
exactly right. You know, use somebody else's ball, and and
I saw one time. So I don't get balls made personally because of that reason. Actually, I had a buddy. And it was so funny. He hands me this pack of golf balls before the round, and golf with them quite often, and way better golfer than I am. So he's like, these golf balls are good. They're cheaper golf balls, but they're of high quality. They're kind of like one of those they're called MG Golf, but it's like a Snell or Vice or something like that. And which is what I play. I like playing Snell golf balls because they're much cheaper but they're made by the same guy that came up with the Pro V1. So
Right.
the guy that founded it. So. He gives me these golf balls, and sure enough, they have our logo on them. So I'm like, okay,
No way.
these are cool. So I get them, and I'm like, I'll play them today. So sure enough, I get on number 9 at Bluff Point, and I get a hole-in-one. My first and only
Really?
hole-in-one in my life. I've never seen a hole-in-one in my life, and I happened to get one. And so it was just funny that happened, and naturally they were with those golf balls. So I said, usually I don't want to play with them because I'm going to lose them, but that happened to work out.
Wow,
Literally 9
that's
holes
cool.
after he gave me the
It's
bag.
also nice to play new courses too. I think also to get around.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
North
because
Country.
Kilbit, you got a chance to play through Paul Smith. You got a chance to play. I called him one day. He was in New Hampshire. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where our league is because it's smaller schools have different leagues. Like Shazy has to play schools that are out of county. We played in Peace Golf Course and Loudon that
that's
weekend, and one of the best parts was we got to go to Kittery Trading Post, and being from a school that you got hunters that are they put their guns in the armory there. Kittery Trading Post is like heaven to them. So
Yeah.
no, it was a good learning experience. I think that playing different courses, and I love North Country. I love it to death, but kind of getting around, and that's why I mentioned Harmony is really cool to play. Like when we went to Florida, and what you see with Florida, and you're seeing now up here too with Harmony, is you have houses lining.
Yep.
So if you hit a bad shot, you might make someone angry, but
I think like
It's part of the
Harmony-
risk of building it.
Yeah.
We got a couple friends that live on the golf course in Harmony, and a couple people in particular that one couple that we know very well, and it's nice to see what he's done there, and just that would be. I always thought how nice that would be to live on a course like that, and it's just they have a community, they have not just a golfing community, but a true community.
One of my elementary teachers lives up there, and we were playing on the hole, whatever the one that goes in but backside of the house is on the front nine,
front
2 or
nine.
3, something like that.
I think 3 or 2 or.
Yeah, and I remember hitting in there, and he was doing yard work, and of course I was playing with a couple high school buddies, so we talked to him for a bit, and he was right there, so he came out and was talking to us on the green, and no, it was fun. But so Chris, I wanted to jump back in.
Yeah.
We'll go back to work real quick. Is Wyeth, when you were at Wyeth, because this is something I think you'll give us good perspective. I knew Wyeth as being a major, business back in the day, and obviously being from Shazy, it was a lot of families, parents were employed there, and what was the number up to from employment numbers? Was it close to $2,000?
Oh, it was close to 2. There was one time when I was working with the engineering group, we were looking for places we were running out of parking spaces. It was, at one time, of course, we were the largest employer, with the hospital being second, and now, of course, the hospital is number 1. There is no more Wyeth or Pfizer, but it was pushing 2. It was up in the 2,000, or just short of it, if I remember correctly.
And how, because I remember, and I think, again, I think this is not the entire building's down, right? There's a portion of it was torn down.
Yeah, there's a couple buildings still at the High Bay Warehouse, which I recall is like building 25 and 37.
So there's still some businesses
There's still
up in
some there, yeah.
Because I remember, when Wyeth was at its peak, and I'm going to say this was probably early 2000s to 2005 to 10, somewhere in that range. I was a young kid, but I remember going up to Rouse's Point. And Rouse's Point, still a beautiful community, but it was a very vibrant community up there because you obviously had that employer. You had a lot of restaurants, you had a lot of shops, you had a lot of obviously people living up there. And I think one of the, seeing them completely leave, and again, seeing the other Wyeth and Shazy leave from near the Minor Farm, that's just one where, like, I saw families starting to leave, and you start to see the numbers at the school decrease. And I think a lot of it had to do with just a whole family, husband, wife are employed there. Now they have to go, move to Southern New York to a pharmacy or somewhere else, and they take their 2-3 kids out of the school. And we started to see some of that, kind of as the time as I was leaving school and just after I'd left school, and how much do you think of an impact that was with that leaving?
Well, I always equated it too. And I mean, when I was growing up, when I was Kale's age or low, when I remember I was 15 or 16 years old, all my family worked for like Sheridan Ironworks or Harris at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that was devastating when that place closed. I think there was like 600 or 700 people there. In fact, my grandfather at the time was the plant manager there. And
when did Harris leave?
86.
Okay, so my dad worked there for a time.
Yeah, he worked there for a time, and I can remember a lot of my friends still around, but a lot of talented people worked there, and a lot of families. My family had 6 or 7 generations that worked there. The Gregoires had 8 generations, I think.
That was on Elm Street?
That was on Elm Street,
okay.
Now known as Kimpex, I believe, or Susie,
yeah.
Susie USA. And then, fast forward a few years to Wyeth, or Eris at the time. I think I started there in 94. And like anything else, again, a lot of talented people there, a lot of great history there, too, with Eris, McKenna, and Harrison. I was fascinated with history. I love history, and so I really embraced the history of the facility and how it grew and all that kind of good stuff. But it was a huge impact. I left before it closed, unfortunately, but it had a huge impact on the community. Not just Rouse's Point, but we used to have all the demographics. And I used to know all this stuff by heart. But obviously, there's a lot of people that lived in Rouse's Point that worked at Wyeth, Eris, or Pfizer, whatever you want to call it. But then there was a good amount of people that came from Colchester and Plattsburgh and Shazy, West Shazy, and of course I'm not including the research side that's looking in Shazy.
Shazy, yeah.
I forget the number that worked there. But there was quite a few people that worked there too as well. But I think the thing is that I think the biggest impact is, and I worry about this with Caleb, is that I was lucky enough to work at one of these places and get that skill set and have those resources and make a decent wage. But they were also very big supporters of the community. I look at the United Way, Wyeth at the time. That's how I kind of got involved in some of the community service other than the emergency services. It's just we were big supporters of the United Way and all the stuff that they did. The local fire departments they would support. I mean, just so much that they would support. And they supported the people, and I think that's a big thing too. Is when you got a big company, and you support the people, and that's why we don't have the volunteers anymore. The days of the company. Almost every town when I was growing up had some 1 or 2 big companies. Of course Wyeth and Sheridan or Harris being the biggest ones. But when those people leave and you lose that populace, you lose a lot. You lose your community leaders if they move. You lose your monetary resources. In the case of Wyeth, I think they accounted for like 60% of the water and sewer usage in the village of Rouse's Point. So who's going to pay that?
You lose the tax base too.
Tax base. I mean, it's just so much. I mean, there's just more than losing people. You lose talent, and I think that's the hard part.
Well, you lose generations too.
Yeah. And, I'm glad to see Caleb likes to. He may not live in Champlain, New York when he gets done school, but I'm sure he'll be around here. But like anything else, he grew up with hopefully some good exposures. We like to be out in the lake as much as we can during the summertime. He skis, I don't. I mean, that's something he picked up probably from his mother. She likes to ski, but he's a great skier, and I wish I did because the winters can be kind of long around here if you're not into it, right? Yeah. But he's not afraid to go out there and do some skiing and. So when these companies leave, it's hard. And one thing that I've learned through the chamber, and I go back to the last 3 years on the chamber, just because I met so many great people, is that, and I hear Gary Douglas, and I can vaguely remember some of this stuff when the airbase closed. I mean, when the airbase closed and left Plattsburgh, it was devastating. But then fast forward, you look at what's going on the new base and the old base with these businesses and some of the. I don't want to say we're better off without the airbase. That would probably not go over very well, but there's certainly we've certainly reutilized that property.
Yeah.
My father, for an example, is looking at potentially having a house on the base or doing some, that's his next move, to move from Shazy to live on the new base, what I call the new base. And there's some just some awesome infrastructure on that base.
Yeah, I think like I had Gary on the podcast, and of course I'm just fascinated with everything that man says. 'Cause I think there's so much knowledge and experience that he's been through. But I think, he's a big one thing that he kept saying over and over again is he's just a love of strategy. He's a strategist. He loves like he's I kind of allude to, if you're playing the board game Risk, you don't want to play against Gary Douglas, because I could just see his mind turning and or any of those games, and I think one of the things was the same thing, was like, okay, how do we take this negative and what's the silver lining to make it a positive? And I think he recognized the one, that you still have to use that space, and then two, it doesn't happen overnight. Like, it's kind of like a small business. You have to spend years, and we're talking 25 years at this point to get to where we're at now. I'm excited personally because I've only really, I guess, appreciated the last few years of it.
Yeah.
I've seen it, but I was young, so I don't really have the context to put it into the sense of, is this a big deal or not a big deal, until you're actually, paying taxes and going to work and dealing with other people and kind of being an adult. But you look at the amount of strides has been happening over the last 25 years, and then really kind of looking, okay, what's the next 25 years going to be, which for me will put me kind of in my mid to late 50s.
Right.
But then I look at that aspect of, though, that would be pretty cool if we can keep building off of this and have more companies and have it grow, and then hopefully
You got to have a vision, right? It's all about
Yeah.
having a vision. I know Gary's got a pretty good vision, and sometimes I know we concentrate, or he concentrates on that Canadian factor that we talked about earlier, but it is such an important factor. Like, I've never seen the border. I've never recognized the border as a border until just recently, over the last 2 years.
Yeah,
It's
agreed.
such a significant, now you really see that line in the sand. Like,
what I think I always looked at it as being like a little regional thing, because we're just like, go to the border, like, go up to Canada. It doesn't seem like, and it doesn't. We just grew up with it.
Yeah.
But then until you realize the power of government, national government, that just says, oh, by the way, we're shutting that down, and you're like, oh wait, that decision was made, 1,000 miles from us, or Ottawa, or wherever it might be, where they're just like, we're closing it down. And then at that point, it does put it in, like, we know it in the back of our mind, but we always think that, hey, it's just this local region. I know the person at the border. I know this guy. I know his family. I know this gal. And then you look at it, you just physically can't go across it for a time being. But again, like, I feel like I know Montreal the same as if I went to Lake Placid.
absolutely, yeah.
It's like, I just know the
Absolutely.
streets. I know the people. I know the restaurants. I know the shops. I know, like... And it doesn't seem like you're
And then
going
when
to a
that's
city.
taken away from you too, that's what, like, I used to like going to, we go to a few of the Canadians games, Montreal Canadiens
absolutely,
games, and we had some, Caleb and I especially had some good experiences, whether they win or lose. It was just to be there, And I just saw a documentary on what they call the AC, I think it is. It's a short 25-minute film on when they built the St. Lawrence Seaway. Okay. And if you ever get a chance to watch that,
What's that on?
It's on YouTube, and it's on the St. Lawrence. I'll share with you. It's the AC, I think it is. They call it, and it's like a film built, or actually it was narrated by Walter Cronkite, out of all people, and it talks about when they were building the St. Lawrence Seaway, how important that Seaway was, and how that, and for example, they had to move a whole town. A whole town got flooded, or 2 or 3 towns actually were flooded, and just to make way for the Seaway. But they said,
so that was man-made.
It was all man-made.
Okay.
Most of it was man-made because they were fighting, like, it talks about the Lachine Rapids and some of the things that they got into, and they said, and they show this meeting where it says, engineering-wise it can be done, but it'll never happen. Just, it's so cost prohibitive, and it's, the cost, and this is back in the 50s, but you know what? They built 2 hydro dams out of it, and they built, obviously, the commerce going back and forth. It didn't cost, it paid. It's already paid for itself.
Didn't they just rebuild the Champlain Bridge up there?
Yeah, they just rebuilt the Champlain Bridge. I only went over it like twice before they closed.
I was
going to
say, because I remember it being built, and it doesn't seem that long ago, but
No.
it would have been 2, 3, 4 years ago now, when they're building it. I guess northeast of the current one.
North, yeah.
So I remember going over that, plenty of times, and to see that one. And every time I drove over, to me it was fascinating just to see how a bridge was built, because
I wish I could stop. Like I always wanted to stop and just look
Observe.
at it, but you can't stop. When you're on
No.
the old Champlain Bridge, you stop, you're gonna get.
Well, it's like when they build skyscrapers. I'm just
Yeah.
fascinated how they build skyscrapers. But I know there's like claw systems and cranes, and I'm like, it blows my mind. Like if you're in New York City building this 100 story building, and having a way to get the stuff up there where it's not falling down, and I'm like, it just blows my mind what like the engineering feats at. And of course, a lot of this you could probably watch a YouTube video on how it's done, but like you always scratch your head, like how.
Well, even like the bridge in Ross Point, I was 16, 17 years old. That was under construction, and I can remember the old swing bridge, and going through there with a boat and having that bridge swing open, and I can remember.
So what was there before?
It was like before the bridge that's there now.
Yeah,
it was like a 2-lane swing bridge. So every time a sailboat went through, that thing would swing open, and I can remember as a kid just watching that thing just turn. I would pray for God for a boat to come through just so I could watch it turn. It was cool.
So was it pretty low to the ground then, the bridge?
Yeah, it was, compared to the one now, it was pretty low to the ground. I didn't think about it. Sure, it was really low to the ground.
Well, you look at like, and you take it for granted because you just drive over it. You don't even think twice about it. But like that one, and then when they built the one down in the new one down in Crown Point. And it's just cool to watch, like the sea bridges, and just I don't know what the fascination with bridges are, but we were down in New York City a couple weeks ago, and we drove over to George Washington, and just to see, I mean, that's one, it's beautiful because it's right over the Hudson, and it's kind of weird. You see the hillside, and you look, and you actually see Manhattan, and just like the infrastructure to build it is just incredible. I mean, I just find it fascinating because they're so high up, and you're talking about all this weight of cars, and you're talking about going down into the ground to make like. How can you put something in the ground where it's actually going to stay? Because you think a lot of times it's like muck down there, so you got to really like make this sturdy.
How do they make it stay? Yeah,
underwater too.
Right,
and,
exactly.
And again, someone building bridges probably like, idiot, this is how you do it. And I'm like, but I've never looked into the process of it. But I think I don't know. I just think that stuff's pretty neat. And so, Chris, what's your hope, or what's your vision, or what do you see the North Country maybe turning into over the next handful of decades, having had a little bit of past experience and history, and then.
Well, I hope that people, I mean, I love the North Country. I love this area. And I just hope I look at Caleb, and I hope there's opportunities out there for people such as Caleb, and that we can still attract people, and that we, I look out the window here. I look at Lake Champlain. I just love Lake Champlain. I love the history of it. I just pray to God that the people that we leave our legacy to have the same opportunities that we do, and really appreciate and value the area. And get to understand, embrace the history of it, embrace the current state, and look towards the future. And I think we have, I know we have some pretty talented people looking at the future. Not just Plattsburgh either. I mean, I'm talking like the whole area, like the whole region.
Regional, yep.
Region and all that kind of stuff. And I think it took me a while probably to understand really appreciate the history. Even though when I was going to school, I loved history, but to really, as I get older, I really truly appreciate the history of where we live and the whole region, and actually the beauty of it. And I think it takes, like you said before, I had the opportunity, at least before COVID anyway, to do some traveling, but it's always nice to come home, right? It's always nice to come home, and we live in such a beautiful area, and I obviously know a lot of people that travel to our location from different parts of the United States to Canada, and they're just fascinated. I mean, they come here to vacation. I mean, they come here to spend some time along what we call now the Adirondack coast, and I hope we can coin that phrase a little bit more. But we got a lot of, and just to get to know the people. I think I know we have probably one of the best workforces around in terms of dedication, and maybe some of that too. When I was growing up, I mean, some of the best people that I've ever hired or used to grow up on a farm, because they have that dedication, they have that value, and I see Caleb, and I'm obviously a little bit biased with him, but he's a pretty dedicated guy, and puts his heart and soul into everything. So I hope to see, and I know you do in your, I see your or listen to your podcast, and I see you out there, and people like Megan Whedon and all these folks that the young professionals that are coming up. Molly Ryan just got appointed to the IDA, which is great news, and Molly did a great job for Billy Jones, some of the good politicians that we have out there. So
when you're talking about eye-opening, a couple years ago, maybe you were there, Billy had his like roundtable thing. And I just great. Like sitting there and listening, and it's kind of funny. I think the two youngest people were me and Alex Berry. Alex is my age, and she was sitting. I think I was sitting next to Alex. And so we were sitting there, and Adam Crosley was there, and Adam's a few years older than me, but most people, I was in the younger age bracket there, so I remember sitting there, and I had stuff prepared because I was like, I don't even know what this is going to be, and if I get called on, I don't want to just be like a deer in headlights. So I had done a little bit of research prior, and I didn't say a word the whole time, but part of me was just watching it go around and just internalizing and just learning everything. I forgot the guy's name from Drew's farm, not Willie or Craig, but Vicky's husband.
Can't think of his name.
Todd was there, and then you started looking at the people from BOCES, and you started looking at obviously people that ran companies, and Dave Coyer was there from staffing, and when you start adding in all the different inputs of people, and Kim Mannion was next to me at the time when she owned Maui, and you start hearing their points of view, kind of the same thing. We all come from different industries, but I was looking at what's the similarities, and then what's something that I might not be really affected by too much, but Todd might be, or the president of BOCES might be bringing up, or education, and you start tying in the similarities between all of us, and like, okay, they're struggling with this, and they're struggling with this, or maybe, and a lot, obviously, like broadband was a big one for many people, and you start realizing that there's a lot of interconnectedness amongst industries and amongst people and amongst, especially the area. And I find the one thing that I like is when you get a lot of like-minded people in a room to kind of spitball ideas back and forth.
Yeah.
It's powerful. And I think the one thing that I hate politics on a national scale, because it's just so divisive, and to me it's a sideshow. But if you look at the politics on a local level, I think I'm very interested in it, because not that I don't want to run for politics, but watching like someone like Billy or Mike Cashman, or people on the county level, Mark Henry, and you're looking at these people that have inputs and ideas and all the stuff they're trying to bring together to have some type of positive impact. But then
they're pulling in the same direction. I think that's
exactly
the key, is that, and you see that too with the collaboration. Again, over the last few years, but looking at the collaboration with Clinton Community and Plattsburgh State, and how they're critical to like the business world and to the financial world and the healthy. And I never really, I don't want to say I didn't appreciate, but I never really understood it as much as I did. They're so critical.
Well, two things off of that. I mean, one, I'll jump back when you look at Cashman and Rosenquist, like starting to have a little bit more, I think, collaboration of the two, which is, I mean, you have to, because we're a small area. You have to, like, the shared services and all that makes sense. But then you start looking at the colleges. The one thing that in the back of my mind is something that it's kind of a goal of mine at some point in my career, is to work more with, because I have interns from Plattsburgh State, and I went to Plattsburgh State, and the thing is, when you go to Plattsburgh State, when I was about Caleb's age, maybe a little bit older, is you don't, to me, it was just like, okay, I gotta go to college. It was like checking the box. I gotta go to school, and it was. I was coaching at the time. I was working. I didn't stay on campus. I commuted to save money, and I looked at it as something I had to go do, and I didn't embrace it as much as I wish I would have, because now I embrace it more. Because one of the things we talk about, people coming to the area and staying, there's not a better gateway to the North Country than Plattsburgh State, because you have even if you say 50% of the college is people that are from out of the area, and that's probably small. It's probably more than that. Yeah. You're talking that's 3,000 to 4,000 students that come in from other parts of the country and other parts of the world that get brought into our community, and trying to build a better community for, if someone went down to Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and went to UNC, there's probably opportunity in and around Asheville and Raleigh and all those places down there. We're like, I'm just going to go there, even though I'm from Iowa. Well, and that's just an example. But if you bring someone in from Rochester or Long Island or New York City up to here, and you say, wow, I like the college. It's a little more low key, but I like the vibe of it. And oh, by the way, there's opportunity here for me, because I've said this before. It's like, you get a kid from college, I always ask them, all the interns, like, okay, do you like Plattsburgh? Yes. Or do you like college? Yes. Do you like the area? Yes. Do you like what you do? Yes. Would you stay here? And they're like, yeah, that if an opportunity. And then it's followed up like, are you going to stay here? And it's like, well, or what's your plans after college? And it's like, well, I think I'm going to go back to hometown, fill in the blank. And I think a lot of it is either there's no opportunity, or it's not presented, or it's not put in front of them as much.
It's not put in front of them, yeah.
And I think one of the and it's being done, but one of my you talk about like a vision board plan, whatever. One of the things I have written down of things I would like to be involved in is really putting a focused effort to be like liaison the college to the local community.
Yeah.
And I know there's groups that do that, but to really put something in place where it's like we're actively going to go in and proactively go in and try to show these young students like here's a very viable option, and here's a very vibrant, growing community, and here's a beautiful place to raise a family.
It's
and
important now. It's important more than ever because we need to retain that talent once they leave. And I think you see it too. I look at, not knowing the airbase like I should, but I look at the people that stayed over from when the airbase closed. A lot of them are either I've worked with them or they hold some pretty high positions in the community right now.
Yeah.
Based on their experience, but they came here not with the intention of staying, but at the end of the day, a lot of people stayed.
Yeah, and I think the more we can grow that and show that, and I think, and again, since the base closed, and the base closing wasn't, I don't really think was a reach like our, obviously there's political reasons why it closed, but if you take the last 25 years of trying to again strategically put us back on the map, and whether it's the transportation cluster that Gary talks about, or everything else that stems from that, and even just the getting Joel involved with Namstrand and trying to put more of a focus, or Sue putting the focus on the development aspect, and I think bringing all of that here, but then allowing as that starts to mature, you will get.
And your small businesses have a big impact on that too. Not just we spent a lot of time in the last hour or so talking about the large stuff, but I'm really excited to see what's happening with the smaller businesses. Based because of COVID, I hate to say it, but and I know a lot of my Christmas shopping this year was. Last year I think it was like 99% all online, and this year was about 90% local businesses, which is great.
Well, I think you try to put a focus on that, and the same thing with like food.
Yeah,
I would say if we go out to eat, 99% of the time it's at some local establishment.
Absolutely,
and I would say 90. Probably close to that, 99% of the time, if I get gift certificates for people, it's from a local place.
Yeah, just to support them.
Yeah, like I'll make the extra trip out to Latitude or the Pepper or Anthony's to go pick up something, because the thing is, those people, and like I know Dave and the people that own Anthony's live in my commute, like my streets, and you I just think there's a lot of, like I said, it's kind of the economic cycle that you want to try to keep as much here, but I think that going out and bringing the economics back into the community is important too, and we're starting to see.
Absolutely. I mean, I look at Caleb's uncle owns Cornerstone in Keysville Pharmacy. Danny, great guy, and he really does a lot for the community, and he really tries to put back into the community where, I shouldn't say this, but you're not going to have that same type of feeling from, say, like not that they're a bad company, but like a Walgreens or something of that nature, Whereas Danny's always supported the local folks.
Yeah, I got to get Danny on here because I don't know that I know of him. I don't know him that well, but again, just an individual that you see doing stuff in the community, and I think a lot of people have a lot of respect for him and what he's done. And like a lot of it is just the mentality that people have, and if you have that, I call it kind of a North Country mentality, which I think is a great thing to have, and I think the people that have that, knowing that, like, hey, this is a cool place to be and a good place to be, and I think really dive into that is in the future just gonna be cool.
Well, Danny's a good example. I mean, he could have probably worked for left the area. I'm sure he could have left the area and probably had that opportunity, but he, maybe make a lot more than what he's making now, just working for. And at the end of the day, just be able to go home but he doesn't do that. He's taken that pharmacy in Keysville and done some really neat stuff down there. Same thing with the Cornerstone Ross's Point. But he took that chance, and he's a hard working, dedicated guy. So that's a good example. I look at Danny and some of these folks.
Like I said, mindset, and you got to have that courage and that self belief just to make it, like, it's small business, just to say, like, I'm going to bet on myself a little bit and see if we can make it happen.
Caleb and I aren't smart enough to be pharmacists, I don't think, but like Uncle Dan. But he, it's a unique. Profession. Really
that area too. I mean, not being alive during that time, you guys saw Champlain in 1980, 1990, and if you go back, mentioning the legend, I see him often is Calvin Castine. I go back and watch the videos of him driving through in 2000 or 1990, driving through Champlain, and going. I talk about Don's place, Central Nutrition. I mean, that's a small
Yeah.
place, and people have mixed feelings about it. But you're bringing something to Champlain that hasn't been there in 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
I mean, ever since they got, I mean, there really isn't many businesses that are in the village anymore. And that's why I cringe a little bit, not going against anything, but Roz's point, when you look at the old Wyeth property, and they and you listen to the board meetings, and they're turning down these ideas of the solar and incorporating more business into that area. I mean, you kind of forget how much outside work has expanded Roz's point, like the power and.
Well, one of the things, I love the idea of solar power and all that. And I think that obviously that's going to be the future for a lot of things. But the one thing that I've always wondered, and then you just brought it up with the Wyeth area, but they used to have the Miramar outlets. I'm surprised there's not an outlets anymore.
I know.
Especially that place up there looks like, I mean.
It looks like hell. I mean, that's in our backyard. It's literally in my backyard.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like, I mean, I hate to, it's not Chernobyl, but it looks like that.
Yeah.
It was just like packed up and everybody left. And
Yeah.
it's still sitting there. And Miramar's, if you go down to Estero, which is just south of, or just north or just south, I think, of Fort Myers. There's a massive, it's the Miramar outlets down there. It's the same thing. But I mean, Wyeth, I don't know if it has that much space, but there's a decent amount. And I always thought if you could put the land down off of the turnpike as you go down Tom Miller Road and the turnpike, there's a bunch of land right there. Neil's actually got a big plot for sale too. If you look at that, the idea of like, could that have been turned into some kind of outlet? Because you would get the Canadians that would come down, and I think that would be a place for businesses and be a place for. And again, I don't think I'm saying anything that hasn't been already discussed at the town or a county level, but that would be something that I think you could have a lot of impact. Well, gentlemen, because of time and because I don't know, I just want to make sure that you were no calls came in or anything.
No, we've been pretty quiet. And
I was gonna say, if calls came, you guys would. I didn't even think about that. You've been rushing out the door.
No, we
got one.
Did you get a call?
We got one. Roz's point. Yeah.
Well, we thank you for the opportunity to jump on and talk about different stuff, and Caleb, for Caleb to have some exposure here and just to jump on, and great morning.
No, absolutely. And I guess last question: are we related anyhow?
No, so that's a disclaimer, right? I don't know. Maybe
spelt the same way.
Spelt the same way. Often people ask me, and of course the affiliation. I look at where Joey's involved with.
We said that Dave, and I was like, I've known Dave for a while, and it's like,
yeah. So no, there are a lot of Trombleys around here though. But we're not related.
I was gonna say probably the Ellenberg Trombleys.
No, actually, my Trombley heritage, if you will, really came from Vermont. I was actually born in St. Albans, but moved here, I think, when I was like 1 or 2 years old. Obviously, I don't remember it, but
what was your mother's maiden name?
Strack.
Strack, okay.
Yeah, so there's a lot of Stracks up in the.
We actually bought our house from Stracks.
Which Strack?
Bart.
Yeah, there's some relation there. Yeah.
Okay.
Like a cousin or something like that. So Strack is a pretty common name up in the Saranac area and Saranac Lake and that in Redford.
Well, that's where we live in Morrisonville. So
Redford.
Their kids would have went to Saranac.
There's some relation with Redford Glass, and we get into the whole history of that. But so there's a lot of Trombleys around, just like there's a lot of different names out there. LaFountains, Cast Irons.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say the thing is when you go up. There's names from all around, but when you really go up into the northern tier and you get all those French Canadian names, then you're like, okay, we're like those are historically long years of family lineage there.
Yeah.
So Trombley's one of them, and there's multiple ways to spell Trombley. And,
multiple ways. I mean, we spell it right, the BLEY way.
That's right.
So that's good. So
I was gonna say, I have a lot of Shazy Trombleys without the E.
Yeah.
So they always say we put the feminine E in it, but
that's right.
I think ours just looks a little more complete with the EY.
A lot of Trombleys and Shazy.
Yeah, they all great guys. No relation, but they're all like I said. I grew up with a lot of those people.
Yeah, we got some good people all the way around Plattsburgh, Shazy, Champlain, Ellenberg. I mean, you name it.
Yeah,
we really truly do have. I think that's the heart and soul of what we're talking about today as a people. So
yeah, absolutely. Well,
thank you.
No, absolutely. So again, that's Chris and Caleb Trombley, and like I said, if you need anything with operations or we want to check them out, again, Country Malt group up in Champlain, and Caleb, I'm sure we'll be hopefully seeing more of him in the future. He seems like a bright young man and off to some pretty cool things. So gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on. That is episode 178 of the Galen Trombley Show. Thanks for listening to the Galen Trombley Show. If you want to reach me, you can go on Facebook at Galen Trombley, on Instagram at Galen Trombley, and on YouTube at Galen Trombley. The spelling, GaelanTrombley.